Her sickness appeared inescapable as it demolished her health. My mother's weakness seemed to pretty much exacerbate the illness. The discomforting fact about her illness was that the doctors had no ability to determine what was causing it. Slowly and gradually, each day her body began to deteriorate. First, her nails began to snap, then her hair began to fall into clumps, and now her skin was peeling uncontrollably. It was as if she were being slipped into chemo pills. By this time, our house no longer felt like a home. It was transforming into a hospital. First, she had one caretaker, then two, and then now we have 5 in the house. IV bags were strung about her room, and medical supplies now scattered all around the house. My mother's bed has become the only place she spends her days. In fact, I haven't even seen her left the bed in nearly a week. An inescapable sense of fear slowly faded into the family's emotions. Days were spent entirely thinking about my mother and attempting to research what possible illnesses it was. I usually spent as much as my time on the internet, researching things. I had a natural thirst for knowledge, and in this case, I decided to do research on everything I could on the internet. However, I had little luck in discovering possible diseases she may have. I could have spent the entire night on the computer, but something drew my attention elsewhere. As I worked on the computer, my peripherals detected something outside of the house. I shifted my gaze over to the window and scanned in the area in search of abnormal abilities. I swiftly recognized an obscure figure. Standing by a tree in the woods was a lanky, bony, dark figure. There was a little light escaping from the reaches of our home, but the minuscule amount it had, it just barely illuminated the area around this figure. Whenever it was stood motionless, just intently staring at her home, I felt rather unsafe and rolled open upon the window. "Hey!" I exclaimed. However, there was no response. The scrawny figure remained static, looking directly at me. I felt quite uncomfortable. It was as if I had some agenda or plan, and it was standing there just waiting for me to sleep, so he may execute his plan then. Although it was a tough battle, I eventually managed to discover that rest that night. The next morning I woke up in surprise after a terrifying dream. The rusted springs in my mattress violently creaked, and dust jumped out my covers as I shot up in bed. It was almost as if I had been suffocated under my covers. I fought through the mess in my bed to the window. After looking outside, there was no longer any sign of the abstract figure. I was filled with relief, as my nightmare had been swiftly proven false. The previous evening, I dreamt of the abstract figure entering our home. While in the house, he was in my mother's room, whispering what sounded like nothing far from gibberish. I was eager to discover what I had imagined was invalid. The next day it didn't really differ from the recent schedule. Being the summer, I spent the majority of my time outside, ran through the woods, exploring, venturing my way through the tall oaks. Before I arrived back in my home, I noticed a peculiar sight. On one ground lay several strands of hair. This looked somewhat odd, but as I kept rummaging through the leaves, I noticed things only grew increasingly peculiar, and next to the hair lay several teeth. I also found what looked like human flesh. It appeared as if the skin on someone's hand had been peeled from bone and muscle, looking similar to a glove piece in the flesh laying on the ground next to her body parts. I filled the home with curiosity. I decided the best way for me to indulge this interest was to research it. As I looked up random body parts in the woods, it did not discover much. I continued searching, but like my mother's illness, I found little explanation. However, this would quickly change. I remembered the disturbing tall figure standing outside my house. I decided it couldn't hurt to look up. The search results I found were quite unsettling. If what I found on the internet was the same site I had noticed outside my home, my family and I were fucked. As I reached through the articles, it stated a man was a demonic presence attempting to take each human form. Several failed attempts. It may shed flesh or other body parts. It explained that these were rejections from the natural human body, as it recognized its demonic form. It explained, however, it may take a full human presence after sucking the life out of a current human. Only then that the human parts of this would accept the demonic form. They called this creature the Abstract Man, and by the time I felt disheartened, as I soon realized the height of the situation. The entity was trying to make the position of my mother, and was trying to take it. Sure enough, I stood from my computer. I gazed out the window and was greeted by now the unnerving sight of the Abstract Man. He stood there, almost as if he newly acquired knowledge. He stared directly at me, now closer than before. His gaze remained unbroken, as his face was locked on me. I couldn't make out any inhuman in his face, as he had no eyes, nose, or mouth. The straggly form was then totally devoid of color of definition. Now feeling slightly disturbed, I remained on my bed the entire night, worried about the Abstract Man would strike. I got up every hour to continuously check on his presence. At 2 a.m. he was closer, at 3 a.m. he stepped closer still, and at 4 a.m. he was unnervingly close distance. At this time I decided I should alert my parents. I woke them up and told them about a man standing outside of our home. My father gripped his shotgun and began walking outside. My mother lay in bed in a deep slumber as my father pounded the door open, and we were both greeted with the surprising sight. Outside our lawn remained empty, or any presence of entity. I felt embarrassed, or maybe I thought maybe I was just seeing things. The following day, my father and mother left for the hospital. Unfortunately, her illness grew worse. I reserved my beliefs under her sickness due to the fact that would little trust such a ridiculous premise. I sat on my computer attempting to search more on the Abstract Man and discover more that filled me with unsettling feeling. As I discovered this figure tried to destroy any information itself quickly after taking it the form of its host. When my mother came home from the hospital, I was pleasantly surprised. She appeared to have fully recovered. She walked around the kitchen, I overcome with joy as I rushed to hug my mother. I thought after the disappearance of the Abstract Man, she would easily be able to return to a healthy state. As I returned to my room, I received a phone call. When I picked up my phone, my heart sank. Eerily over the phone, I heard a familiar voice spoke. It sounded rather weak. My mother spoke. "Son, I love you. No matter what happens, I love you." She sounded as if she was fighting for her life. I tried to respond, but she was unable to. So as I peered over my shoulder, standing there, I saw whatever this thing was now resembled my mother. When it opened its mouth, I heard a sound revolting unlike my mother. It uttered shrieks, and stood staring at me, flourishing with hatred. As I looked at the door and tried to dart it away, this was being me chased through the inhuman speed and forced me to halt. It snarled in a nasty voice, but I gripped hardly the kitchen knife, but I grabbed my other arm as steadily speed as it gaping its mouth towards my flesh. It was unsuccessful to bite my limb. I just jutted the blade into the creature's neck. It fell to the floor, gargling on its own blood. It shrieked and struggled on the ground. The disgusting conjunction of the flesh changed its voice to my mother's as it screamed, "Help me, son, help!" I looked back at the being, unable to be tricked by it. I pulled the knife out from its throat and it crawled away on all fours. I would have attempted to stop it, but it was too much quick for me. As it sped away, it made a horrible croaking noise. I still ran away from my mother. That day my mother died, I guess there was only enough room for one of her on the planet, and this creature now occupied the spot. The Abstract Man now takes the forms of many. It still roams this world as my mother. I have no clue of its whereabouts, but as I said, he will do whatever it takes to destroy the information about him anywhere. As a caution to those who read this, I recommend you check outside your window every night. He knows you now and will now be at whatever cost to track you down, be rid of your knowledge of him. If you ever look out your window and see that tall figure, you're pretty much dark and staring, you must pack your bags, throw them in the car, and get the hell out of where you live. If you're lucky, you will have evaded him. If you weren't, well, then be ready to give up your body. Alright. Well, that was The Abstract Man, a creepypasta written by per- Procrastination16. My final thoughts on the story. It's a pretty good pasta. I personally really thought it was a good one. It's a really neat one. I do like it. It's a well-made story. It's definitely one of those stories that I personally really thought it was enjoyable. It's a good story. I do like it. I mean, it's a really well-made story, but I also do think that it does have, a really good idea of what this story is going for. So, I personally do find this story to be enjoyable. It's definitely really good. I mean, the grammar of this story was pretty good, as well as the sentence structuring, the storyline, everything about it. Oh, apologies for that. I'm just a little tired. But, anyways, this was actually a pretty fun story. I personally really liked it. I thought it was a really good story. I mean, it's well made in detail, and it does have some, I do have some theories that it could have been like maybe a skinwalker taking the form because it kind of reminds me of it. But I still personally thought it was a good story. And in all due reality, I personally really thought it was enjoyable. I mean, it doesn't, go too much into detail what happens next, or there's no backstory if it happens to other guys, like other people in the story, but I personally really do like it. So it's still a good story. I recommend this story for any of you guys who are, wondering about it. So, anyways, I guess with that being said and that being the case, like I'm gonna say, procrastination, if you're watching this story or video, I wanna say really good job with this story. This was definitely a well made story. Now, I remember seeing Creepypasta narrated this story, so I thought, I would go ahead and, go on and check this story out because, it's a really good story. So, yeah, I guess with that being the case and that being said, I'm just going to sit here and say this right now that this is just simply my own personal opinion. And if you disagree with me, that's perfectly fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions regards to these stories. This is just simply my own personal thoughts. Yeah. My final rating of this story is definitely a 10 out of 10. It's a really good story. It's really well made, and I personally really thought it was enjoyable, to which it is. So, this is actually one of the stories I personally really thought it was enjoyable. It's a well made story. I mean, it's messed up and stuff, but I personally really enjoyed it. So, I guess with that being said and that being the case, yeah, like I'm gonna say before, this is a pretty awesome story. It's well made in detail, and I personally really found it readable, to which it was. So, I guess with that being said, if I am missing anything in the story, please let me know what it is in the comments below. Because if I'm missing something, you guys can let me know in the comments below. I'll leave a link to this story down in the description, so you guys can go check out this story if you haven't. So, anyways, with that being said, and that being the case, what did you guys personally think of this story? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what you have done personally to help make this story a lot better? Leave me now what your thoughts are thinking in the comments below. I'm the Lion Queen. I want to thank you so much for watching today's video, and if you're new to my channel, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Ring the bell for notifications to when it uploads. That way you guys will not miss an upload. Also, I am going to say right now that if you like my channel, be sure to like this video as well. Also, if you're interested in following my DeviantArt page as well as my Twitter account, links to those will be in the About page section in my channel. And if you're interested in following my backup channel known as Miss Dark Shigo, link to that will be also in the About page section on my channel, so you guys can go check that out. So I guess that's pretty much all I have to really say. So like I said before, and like I always say, I'll be seeing you guys all in the next video. Peace out. And if I'm missing anything, let me know. And as always, I'll be seeing you all in the next video. Peace out. And like always, please roll the outro because I'm out.